Hello, my name is Ken Wu Lee, and this is my Handmaid's Tale specialist assignment on chapters 35 and 36. Before diving right into the content and the details surrounding them, I'll be introducing the book itself. Originally published in 1985, The Handmaid's Tale, written by Margaret Atwood, is a dystopian novel predominantly revolving around the essence of aggregative totalitarianism and the embodiment of objectification of woman. Atwood accomplishes this through the visualization and psychological representation of the main character Offred, whose victim-like existence centermost the transition of women to handmaids, where basic human rights and conventional privileges are withdrawn and abolished. Although Atwood's keen purpose of portraying women as objects is blatant, in the bigger picture, Handmaid's Tale manifests a modern society where relatively parallel day-to-day global issues are encountered. Now, to give a clear sense of what I'll be covering in the presentation, as shown on the screen, this is the general overview of the presentation. In Chapter 35, Offred's recollection of her flashbacks hint at her nostalgic state, which constitutes to this chapter's distinct theme of love. Speaking of love, there is a wide range of the different types of love presented, and I'll be touching that in more detail later on in the presentation. As for Chapter 36, Offred is excessively portrayed as a rental, where she embraces her role as a possession rather than as a human. Due to these significant events, I'll be referring to psychological trauma and family separation and sexualization and dehumanization of women as the central global issues surrounding these chapters, which I will explain thoroughly later on in the presentation. To delve right into the context now, I'll be introducing the key events and the significance of each scene with quotations to come along with them. Going chronologically, Chapter 35 begins with Offred's flashback of when her family attempted to cross the Canadian border to escape the harsh reality of Gilead, describing her escape as a state of long breath of counterfeit relaxation, page 224. Her paranoid mindset with constant anxiousness during the scene results in her concluding the flashback. The somewhat juxtaposing term, counterfeit relaxation, indicates a sense in which Offred is attempting to ease herself at a situation where a single decision, a single action, or a single atmosphere could potentially determine the permanent never-ending path in life to alter. To look more closely into each term, the term counterfeit has negative connotations of being forged, spurious, and bogus, while the term relaxation has positive connotations of pleasure, loosening, and refreshment. Thus, the odd combination of these two terms altogether reflect on Offred's anxious state of mind. To further bolster this argument, continuing on to page 225, Offred states, "It's going to be all right," I said, prayed in my head. "Oh, let us cross, just this once, and I'll do anything." As the sentences suggest, she perpetually remains positive and stutters the best-case scenario at a worst-case situation. The anaphoric repetition of "let" hints at her favorable scenarios and gives a clear insight into what state of panic she is going through. Stereotypically talking, stuttering, talking faster and repetitively is a natural human instinct, in which Offred is reiterating unconsciously. Through this flashback, Offred is reminded of how love acted as a form of ambition to pursue a dream that was merely impossible to pursue at the time, given the circumstances. From time to time, this conceptual result of psychological trauma is represented in two shapes of love: mother and daughter love, and romantic love. Mother and daughter love, when Offred is sent to her knees tearing up from seeing a photo of her long-lost daughter who, in all likelihood, forgot about her biological parents. A shadow of a shadow, as dead mother become. I am not there. Page 228. This shallow yet profound quote reflects upon what the existence of Offred means to her daughter, and how they are not mutually acknowledged. How the love is unrequited. Shadows are concrete silhouettes that don't hold any profound significance as they are only considered as reflections of a subject, nothing more, nothing less. And as for the nature of shadows, shadows are intangible and considered to be insignificant as no being treats shadows with human traits, closer to being treated like objects. And by referring to herself as dead from her daughter's perspective, she notes herself as non-existent and as someone who doesn't hold any value as a mother figure or as an influence. Switching up the gears, as for romantic love, she considers Luke as her inelastic partner as she self-reflects to make her life a tribute to her loved one, referring to Luke. Referring back to the first global issue of psychological trauma and family separation, as shown in the scenes presented, the two issues have a cause and effect relationship. As a family member is separated from one member, a trauma emerges and the severity of the trauma increases. A real-life crisis that maintains parallel to the global issues presented in the book is the Trump administration family separation policy, which was implemented across the entire US-Mexico border in 2018. This zero-tolerance policy required families of illegal immigrants to be separated indefinitely, as parents and children suffered from severe trauma and the aftermath of the separation. As of 2020, parents of 666 children have still not been found. And historically speaking, family separation has been, to a certain extent, existent, taking the enslavement of Africans and the separation of families from Korean War as an example. Statistically speaking, these separations cause traumatic experiences for not only the children, but for the adults, and impose as a threat to their permanent mental health, similar to what happened in the book. And these are other important quotations. To give a quick recap of Chapter 36, Chapter 36 begins with Offred encountering a drunk commander who provides her with a worn-looking, skimpy, sequined leotard and some old makeup for a little surprise. Nick then drives Offred and Commander, who pass certain checkpoints, including ones that prohibit wives. Thus, Offred hides on the car floor. As the commander gifts her the extremely provocative hypersexualized clothing, he laughs, more like a snigger. Page 229. Modern-day sexualization tends to be substantial with subtle playful tones that send implicit signals of humiliation and degradation. Though it can be inferred whether the commander's snigger was an intentional sign of humiliation or just genuine happiness, if the woman felt uncomfortable with whatever the male subject did or expressed to them, it is considered sexualization, and I feel like this connection ties perfectly with the global issue of sexualization and dehumanization of women. And with the situation that the commander and Offred were in, there are multiple aspects that accumulate to build the overall effect of sexualization. Starting from the beginning, the commander refers to Offred as the fair little one, page 229, when he greets her. The term little is a sexualized term that has a clear implication of being the weaker minor subject in an intercourse. Then, the fact that the commander somewhat forced Offred to wear revealing clothing is a sign of dominance and promotes rape culture where revealing clothes tend to attract more male attention. In modern society, this is unacceptable behavior as it violates the right to woman's freedom. Furthermore, the dehumanization of women is evident when the commander suggests Offred. If anyone asks you, say you're an evening rental, page 233. The term rental is extremely degrading in a sense that the commander perceives his partner as a possession, not as an intimate individual. Rental usually refers to inferior goods that can be bought and sold, borrowed and returned, and possessed and non-possessed. The lack of choice and say that Offred as a woman has is inhumane and violates the basic human rights. In other words, the commander is utilizing Offred as a puppet that acts based on his will and desire. She's basically being exploited. This idea of objectifying women has been existent throughout history in different cultures and to this day still prevalently exists. Men are naturally inclined to perceive women as objects to assert their masculine dominance over others. The whole idea of gender roles, norms, is parallel to why things are the way they are, since stereotypically speaking, women are often viewed as the weaker subject, the housewife, or as objects that satisfies men's sexual needs. A woman who embraces her traditional role as housewife and a sex toy is no other than a puppet, an object for the man to play around with. The real global issue that connects to my Handmaid's Tales is sex trafficking in Japan. Women in Japan are deemed submissive and are taken to advantage when it comes to sex trafficking. With high school students wearing short skirts, they're heavily sexualized and dehumanized from an early age, which puts shade on their future careers. An outside interpretation of Chapter 36 that I found was interesting is one from Lit Charts. Lit Charts views the events through a different scope, a scope that doesn't primarily focus on dehumanization. Lit Charts states that Offred is excited to change her modest robes to an overtly feminine, sexy outfit. In addition to that, it states that she becomes more self-conscious, aware of a new ideal, as her personality quickly changes as her appearance changes, which juxtaposes my perception of the scene. Thank you.